Our next conversation today is with Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser, who we should say is also running for governor of Colorado. That's the capacity in which he appears here today. Welcome back to Next.
Thanks for having me.
I want to talk to you about the issue that's dividing people in your party right now, which is what to do about redistricting as Republicans gerrymander red states. So to kind of set the scene for folks who are watching this entire thing, President Trump has been directing red states to kind of break with normal redistricting traditions and practices to redraw maps, give Republicans more House seats so that they can try to win in 2026, what people call gerrymandering, right? And Democrats in some blue states are considering doing the same thing in reaction to what the Republicans are doing. So far, I have not heard from any leading Democrats in Colorado that think that this state should follow other blue states in gerrymandering our map to come up with more blue seats. What do you think we should do?
I think that the norm, you do it once a decade, is being shattered right now. We can't sit on the sidelines while other states break this norm. And I want to make a key distinction. When Colorado did its redistricting map, we created, right now we've got a 4-4 breakdown. We have a clear blue advantage in the presidential election. We're getting bluer, but we're 4-4. North Carolina is just doing its third redistricting effort. They started 7-7. They're close to a 50-50 state, and they're pushing the envelope now to be 11-3. Here's the point. I don't like the idea of doing a mid-cycle redistricting. I want it to be once a decade, but that ship is sailing. We have to be prepared to do our part. Ideally, these efforts, we'll see them stop, and we don't have to move forward. But we can't assume that. We got to be ready to do our part.
So you think Colorado should redraw its map to create more Democratic seats?
Here's what I'd like to see happen, Kyle. I'd like to see us, and we have to change our Constitution to do this, a break glass in case of emergency. If you see other states breaking the norm, doing mid-decade redistricting, give a mechanism so that we can match it. And the important thing, by the way, is by creating the possible mechanism, we also create a deterrent effect. It will only happen if we need to because other states are doing it. Colorado can wait if other states wait. But if other states are moving ahead, we shouldn't put ourselves on the sidelines. We need to do our part.
So clearly those other states are moving. Texas is moving, Missouri's moving, Indiana's moving. So do you think Colorado should then move? Not just talk about it, but do you think Colorado should move?
Yes. If Colorado, and it's a two-step process, we got to pass a constitutional amendment that creates an exception. We passed what I believe is what every state should do. Independent, fair districting. We did that. The Supreme Court, by the way, could have made that the law of the land. I pushed hard in this case to say to the Supreme Court, extreme partisan gerrymandering violates the federal Constitution. And that was actually North Carolina. They were going to district fairly because they believed it was a constitutional requirement. Once the court said, no, it isn't, we've seen more and more of this gerrymandering. In Colorado, we do it the right way. But here's the problem. If everyone else is doing something else multi-times during a decade, we got to give ourselves the flexibility. I want to push for that.
Gerrymandering is not new, though, right? Red states have done it, blue states have done it. What is different about this instance that you think that Colorado should abandon its values when we didn't before?
What's new is mid-cycle redistricting. And this is an important point. The norm had been, up until now, this effort pushed by President Trump, you had once a decade, and then we'd have elections. And they would decide who the reps were. The idea that you would then go back and try to change outcomes within that decade, that's new. And my point is, if other states are doing this, and we're seeing, as you say, a number of states looking at it, most recently North Carolina, we got to be ready to do our part. Because if you end up with only one party doing mid-cycle redistricting and the other party doesn't, that's actually a threat to democracy. By being willing to do our part, we create more likelihood that maybe we will see this trend halt somewhere as opposed to go to where every single state does this.
So you talk about this as being a, break glass in case of emergency situation. What do you think about California's approach, where they're asking voters, give us the ability to draw these ideological maps to match fire with Republicans out of Texas, but only for a limited period of time, only through the 2030 cycle. Do you like that idea of it timing out?
Yes. Yeah, this is very important. This needs to be done as a limited intervention to allow us to get back to normalcy. I want the norm that we do it once a decade. I don't want to change the rules forever. I want to say, if you do this unusual, norm-breaking behavior, we'll match it in kind, but if it can stop, let's stop for everybody.
Why not, instead of timing it out, because who knows what's going to happen, 4 or 5 years from now, why not tie it to, we will give up gerrymandering when every state gives up gerrymandering? Is that too high of a bar that we're not likely to get to in 4 or 5 years? Why not make that the trigger to go back to the norm in Colorado?
It's too high a bar. It's got to start somewhere. I'm proud that Colorado did a national model. And what was a very painful fact of life now is when the Supreme Court said we're not going to mandate this rule, no gerrymandering, they actually pointed to Colorado and said maybe states can do this on their own. There is a problem you're pointing to, which is you might call it a collective action problem. And what I would love to see us do is Colorado says we're going to do this, and then another red state, Indiana, says we'll match Colorado. If we could coordinate somehow and keep building better and better practices, that'd be great. I don't know that we can do that, but I also don't want us to walk away from an important project. I want to keep this as a one-time exception, allowing mid-cycle redistricting to match when it's been done in kind, and really do all we can to get back to normalcy. And Cal, this is a problem of the Trump era that we're in right now. We're breaking norm after norm after norm. The work is going to be, how do we reset our norms? How do we reset our democratic institutions? I'm in for that work.
Is this an acknowledgement, though, on your part that in order to compete with Trump and Republicans, Democrats have to behave more like Trump and Republicans?
We have to recognize that we're living in the real world, and we can't ignore what's happening on the ground. And right now what's happening on the ground is the norm that had existed pretty much for the whole republic. It's getting attacked. We have to say, if you're going to attack that norm and you're going to change this practice, we're going to be willing to change ours too, because we've gotten bluer over the last decade. If we did redistricting, it could allow more Democratic seats. Normally, we wouldn't do that. Normally, we'd wait our turn. But if others aren't, then we can't just sit on the sidelines.
This feels like a bit of a test of just how far left Colorado has moved, because this idea of back and forth gerrymandering seems like something that a lot of pretty red states are doing, some exceptions, and some really blue states are doing. Is Colorado that blue of a state, that safe of a Democratic seat, that this is the place to do it as opposed to somewhere else?
Here's how I would look at it. Y and Z, which I endorse and support and campaign for, said fair districting by an independent commission. Our goal is to encourage other states to do the same thing. If we believe in those values, we can't let other states break this norm and say that we're going to stay on the sidelines. We have to be willing to say we can do our part. We can try to, in our case, redistrict based on the realities we have, and we will have more blue seats. That's not something I would have said ever, let's jump and do it because we can get an advantage. No, I don't believe in that. But if others are saying we can get an advantage, we can't let them get that unfair advantage. We've got to be willing to match it. I believe that's a basic sense of fairness that appeals to some of the same impulse that drove Y and Z in the first place.
Does it make sense to you that if Colorado were to go down the path that you're recommending, obviously first it would require voter permission, 55% of the voters, but then it would be the legislature that would draw? Would that be your thought? The legislature would draw the maps?
I do think the legislature would probably have to draw in this case because the time period, unfortunately, isn't giving us the benefit of time.
And they wouldn't be drawing for 2026. This would be voted on by the public in 26 for 28.
Yes. My vision would be we'd have an amendment to our Constitution on the ballot in 2026 that would say, in case of emergency, other states are doing mid-cycle redistricting, Colorado would have the ability to match it in kind, and then yes, the legislature would be the one to match it because this is an extraordinary event that would have to happen within a quick time period. The best result at all, and it still can happen, is that California matches Texas, and we'll see what happens with Indiana and other states, but that this movement comes to a stall, and what we can do is nothing. But assuming, as you pointed out, that this is going to go forward, we have to be willing to do our part.
Do you think that part of it, and is part of the reason that you're speaking out now, to send that message that Colorado is ready to do this and that might forestall red states from doing this and de-escalate? Because obviously us voting on it as a state is more than a year off. This taking effect would be several years away. But do you think there's value in Democrats in Colorado saying now, we will join this effort if you do it?
Yes. My goal is to promote de-escalation. My goal is to promote the message that there will be consequences to other states who are thinking about doing this. Indiana right now is thinking, do we do this? I want Indiana to know, I don't want you to do this. But if you do, that's going to create the consequence that we will feel the need to meet what you're doing mid-cycle redistricting. If we can achieve a de-escalated environment, stop this at California and Texas and call it even, that's the best result right now.
You acknowledge that gerrymandering is bad for voters, yes, right? It's bad for democracy. Yes. It's bad for the function of our government. Those would be harms that would be done to Coloradans if this were to come to pass. And it would be done largely to Coloradans who are on the right side of the spectrum, who would lose representation that matches their values. Why is it worth it to do that harm to Coloradans because of something happening out of state?
Let me offer a very important kind of corrective. I'm talking about mid-cycle redistricting in Colorado. If you look at our state fairly, I don't think you would draw a 4-4 map. We are a bluer state. Jared Polis won his election by 19 points. If we were to redistrict in a way that's more consistent with how voters vote, we're not going to be a 4-4 state. That's what a mid-cycle redistricting could allow, fairer districting. It would be fair because it would be more current and accurate. That's something novel. We generally haven't done it. The norm is once a decade. I like that norm. But if others are breaking that norm, we can too. And by which I mean, we are not necessarily even needing to do a gerrymander. We can do fair districting and it will produce more Democrats. As for why to do that, it's because we're sending a clear message. We're not going to sit idly by. We have a part to play. We're all part of a representative democracy. And if other states are allowed to get this unfair advantage and we sit idly by, then we're enabling that behavior.
When you talk about the idea of drawing a map that's not a pure gerrymander, but is more Democrat favorable, everybody, of course, is going to want to know, what does the map look like, right? You're not asking to draw the map yourself. You're saying the legislature would draw it. But I think it's fair for you, as the most prominent Democrat to come out in favor of this, to tell us what a fair split in the delegation looks like. Because we've seen some extreme gerrymanders in other states, right? And like in Colorado, to me, that would feel like a 7-1 D to R split, would feel like an extreme gerrymander. But what is fair in your mind? Is it a 5-3 map? Is it a 6-2 map?
It's going to be hard to get into all those details because part of what happens is we draw districts that are, in some cases, more competitive. One of the challenges right now is we don't have as many competitive districts. The challenge that we're going to continue to see is if people know that they're going to win, the primaries end up mattering more than the general election. So I don't have any specifics about what the map should look like, but I'm willing to say, let's go do it more than once a decade because other states are doing that.
Would this be a lot of hassle and harm to blow up Colorado's maps for one seat? Do you feel like, because that's the thing, every state is being asked, what are you likely to contribute to this standoff that's currently going on? And is the thought Colorado can deliver 1 more blue seat or 2 more blue seats or 3 more blue seats? That feels like a fair question, right?
Yeah, I don't have a plan for what the map should look like. I don't have a prediction of how many seats, but I do have a conviction that if other states are breaking this norm and other states are doing mid-cycle redistricting, we can't be on the sidelines. We have to be willing to do our part. We're all in this United States Congress as a compact. And if we are essentially acting differently, we're giving people the benefit of the unfair advantage they're taking. What I'd love to see happen is by committing to take this action in Colorado, others say, you know what, we're not going to do it because they're going to match us and negate. By contrast, if we said, no, we're never doing this in Colorado, then we're inviting others to say, oh, we can gain an advantage. There'll be no consequences. Let's do it.
The way that you see this working is the diffusal mechanism, the back to independent, nonpartisan redistricting, is that entirely contingent on what people in other states do, or is there an affirmative step that would need to be taken by the majority party here to say, and now here we go back to normal?
The key idea is I envision an exception to Y and Z. So the norm is 2031, we have new redistricting because we have a new census. That goes through the normal process. Okay. That wouldn't change. However, here we are, 2036. This happens again.
So at the very least in 2031, you would say, let's have maps drawn like they're drawn now.
100%.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Yes.
I think that's important to be clear with.
Yeah,
okay.
It's very clear. What I'm talking about is an exception possibility to Y and Z. It might be never used, and that would be my dream, is that we create the exception, other states say, we're backing off, it's not necessary, we don't have to use it. It might be used one time during this norm-breaking cycle. What we need to know is, can we in Colorado do our part? Are we willing to match this norm-breaking behavior with the goal of getting back to the norm that we all want? My worry, of course, is if we don't match it, then we're encouraging it and giving an advantage to those who are doing this mid-cycle redistricting.
You pointed out something that I think is important to bring into the conversation, and we'll wrap up around this idea, which is that I think some people associate gerrymandering with very red or very blue seats, which is not always the case, right? Sometimes it draws more competitive seats, but it'll draw what was a safe R into a competitive seat, a safer D into a more competitive seat, right? And that can cause all kinds of chaos. What would be your message to Democrats in Colorado who are going to hear you say this, first prominent Dem in the state to come out and say this, and they're going to say, go to the mat, go 7-1. Like absolutely juice the most you can out of this. We both know as people who follow politics, that can initially bring results for a party, but that can be very dangerous in the long run because it's likely to create seats that can flop back and forth. What is your message about how this should be approached ethically if Colorado does this?
I think the goal that I would say in Colorado is we look at what the overall leanings are. We try to approximate those as best we can, and we try to make as many competitive districts and as least purely safe districts. Part of what happened in the map, because this has happened over time, you remember this, Jason Crow was elected in 2018 in what looked and felt like a swing district. He's now winning by 20 points because that district has become more blue. Brittany Pedersen was elected in what people thought was a swing district. That's become more blue. So there's obviously an opportunity to redistrict and to create more competitive districts and to have less people either blue or are in these way safe districts. And that's how democracy is healthier. Ideally, we could wait and not have to do this now, but with other states doing something now, my point is let's get to work, let's be willing to match what they're doing, see this work in kind, and make sure that there's not an unfair advantage that they get from doing a mid-cycle redistricting.
Last question. Do you deny that that would be gerrymandering? It seems like you're trying to hedge between like, well, we can redistrict to Democrats' advantage, but not really gerrymander.
So gerrymander is a term that hasn't had a precise definition.
Sure.
The closest you can say is, are you getting an extreme partisan advantage? And what I would say about Colorado right now, we are the opposite of a gerrymandering state. The Democratic majority with 4-4 in Congress looks like we're, how should we say it, leaving a lot on the table. We're actually bending over backwards to be super fair. And even if we go reasonable, it's going to be more of a blue state. The question that you're pushing is, how far do we go? And I agree with your point. We could go too far. I don't want to go too far, but I want us to be reasonable about it. And the key difference right now is, do we do a mid-cycle redistricting or not? I say yes, because others are doing it thinking they're going to get an advantage. If we don't do anything to match it, we're encouraging that behavior.
It's complicated and it's a heated issue. I appreciate you taking some time to explain your view on it. Thank you.
Thank you.